The palace was silent when night fell. Stars gleamed through the crystal ceilings, and soft lights shimmered along the long corridors. Princess Liara sat alone in her chamber, staring at her reflection in the polished glass. Her violet eyes looked troubled. For days she had struggled to stay calm around Marcus Hale. Every word he spoke, every steady look, every act of quiet courage had chipped away at the wall she had built around her heart. She told herself she was a princess, trained to remain untouchable. But the truth was simple. Marcus saw her differently. Not as a crown, not as a symbol, as a person. And she could not stop thinking about it. Before she could gather her thoughts further, the palace alarms rang out. A deep red light flooded the corridors and a voice echoed through the crystal halls. Warning! Rebel fleet breach detected. Shields under attack! Liara jumped to her feet, her heart racing. The Veari Empire had enemies. Rebels who hated the ruling family, who sought to shatter the throne. They had struck before but never dared to attack the palace itself. The door to her chamber burst open. Guards rushed inside. But behind them, already standing with weapon in hand, was Marcus. His plain armor gleamed faintly under the red light, his face steady. "Stay behind me, princess," he said calmly, as if this was not chaos but another mission. Liara's voice caught. "Marcus, there are too many. You cannot—" But he was already moving. The corridors shook with the force of explosions as the rebel ships fired on the palace. Alien rebels stormed the halls, their weapons blazing. The Veari guards clashed with them, but the fighting spread fast. Too fast. Marcus took the front. He moved like water, precise and fierce. Every strike of his weapon was calculated. Every step placed to shield Liara. She had seen alien generals fight, men trained for decades. But Marcus was different. His fighting was not about style, it was about survival. Liara's eyes followed him, her heart pounding with fear and awe. He faced enemies stronger, larger, better armed, yet he stood unbroken. His body moved with the memory of countless battles. One rebel soldier broke through the line and aimed his weapon at Liara. Her breath caught, too fast to dodge, too fast to block. But Marcus was already there. He threw himself between her and the blast, his armor cracking under the impact. He staggered but did not fall. Her calm broke completely. "Marcus!" she cried, her voice trembling. He turned to her, blood at the edge of his lip, and gave a small nod, still standing. "Stay close." Her hands shook violently now. For the first time in her life, she felt powerless, fragile, unprotected, until she looked at him. This one soldier, this one human, had placed himself between her and death without hesitation. The fighting raged on. Together with the palace guards, Marcus pushed forward, forcing the rebels back through the corridors. His voice was steady, commanding, though he carried no rank here. "Hold the line. Watch the flanks. Don't give them space to regroup." The alien guards, who once sneered at him, now obeyed without question. His courage lit a fire in them, driving them to fight harder. At last, the final blast echoed and the rebels were defeated. Smoke hung heavy in the air, the once glorious halls scarred and broken. Liara stood among the ruins, her robes torn, her crown lost in the chaos. But she did not care. Her eyes were fixed on Marcus. He leaned against a pillar, his armor cracked, his face pale, but his eyes still sharp, still steady. She rushed to him, unable to hold her composure any longer. "Why?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Why do you protect me so fiercely? You are not bound to me by oath. You owe me nothing." Marcus looked at her, his breath slow but strong. "Because you needed help. And humans don't walk away from that." Her tears fell freely now. The calm, perfect mask of a princess was gone. In its place was Liara, simply Liara, a woman who for the first time had been protected not for her crown, but for herself. When the council gathered the next day, they spoke of strategies, of punishment for the rebels, of repairing the palace, but whispers filled the chamber, whispers of what they had seen. The human soldier who had fought like a storm, the human who had shielded their princess without hesitation. The counselors argued among themselves, but Liara's voice rose above them. "Do you not see?" she said, her tone steady, though her heart still raced. "This man has shown us strength greater than our fleets. Not the strength of weapons, but the strength of standing for another, no matter the cost." Some counselors frowned, unwilling to admit it, but others bowed their heads, ashamed. And Marcus? He stood quietly at the edge of the hall, his gaze never seeking praise, his posture unshaken. Liara's eyes lingered on him, and she knew her life had changed forever. She had struggled to stay calm in his presence. She had failed, but in that failure, she had found something far more powerful than composure. She had found truth. That night, Liara stood once again on her balcony. The stars stretched before her, endless and eternal. Marcus stood beside her, silent, his armor repaired but still bearing the marks of battle. "Do you regret it?" she asked softly. He shook his head. "No. If I had to choose again, I'd still stand in front of you." She turned toward him, her eyes shimmering with emotions she could no longer hide. "Then know this, Marcus Hale. You have given me something no crown, no throne, no empire ever could." He raised an eyebrow. "And what's that?" Her voice trembled, but she spoke the truth. "You made me feel seen." For a long moment they stood in silence, the galaxy shining around them, and in that silence the princess no longer struggled to stay calm. She no longer pretended to be untouchable. She was simply herself. And beside her stood the one human who had changed everything. The morning light of a distant sun filtered through the crystal windows of the palace. Princess Liara stood on her balcony, looking down at the gardens below. The air shimmered faintly with the hum of energy fields, and the fountains sang with soft notes that carried across the breeze. Normally this peaceful scene calmed her, but today her mind was restless. The image of Marcus Hale, the human soldier, would not leave her thoughts. His voice still echoed in her mind. His calm defiance, his refusal to bow, his simple honesty. It was unlike anything she had known. For years she had dealt with alien rulers who wrapped their words in formality and pride. But this human had looked at her as though she were simply a person, not a princess on a throne. The council had ordered her to observe him more closely. "Test him," they said. "Measure his character. See if humans can be trusted." So later that day, Liara met Marcus in the gardens. The guards stood at a distance, watching carefully, but the two of them were left to walk alone along the silver-leaved trees. Liara began with the kind of question her tutors had trained her to ask. "Humans are said to be unpredictable," she said, her voice formal. "Why should our empire place trust in your kind?" Marcus glanced at the glowing leaves and then back at her. "Because we don't hide what we are," he answered. "We fail, we fight, we bleed, but we keep standing, even when the galaxy thinks we should fall." The word struck her deeper than she expected. He did not speak like a politician. He spoke like someone who had lived those truths. Liara pressed her hands together to hide the tremor in her fingers. She tried again. "And if trust is betrayed? If humans turn against us?" Marcus shrugged. "Then you'll know soon enough. But until then, maybe you'll see that we can stand beside you when it matters." Liara struggled to keep her face calm. She reminded herself, "You are a princess. Do not let him see your unease." But it was becoming harder. They walked further, the garden path curving around a fountain that sent streams of liquid light into the air. The silence between them stretched. Liara felt her heart beat faster with every step. She wanted to say something personal, something not written in her lessons, but she stopped herself. Instead, she asked, "Do you not fear speaking so plainly? Many here see it as disrespect." Marcus gave her a small smile. "I don't mean disrespect. But if you want truth, I'll give it. If you only want sweet words, you already have enough people for that." Her chest tightened. She looked away, pretending to admire the glowing vines that wrapped around the palace walls. But inside, her calm was slipping again. That evening, when she returned to her chamber, her lady-in-waiting noticed her distracted expression. "Princess," the attendant whispered as she helped remove the jeweled circlet from Liara's brow, "the human troubles you. Do you fear him?" Liara shook her head. "No, that is what troubles me most. I do not fear him. I feel seen, not as a crown, not as a symbol, as myself." The lady-in-waiting lowered her gaze. "Be careful, princess. To be seen is not always safe." The word stayed with Liara. The next test came the following day in the military wing of the palace. The generals of the empire had arranged a demonstration. They wanted to prove the superiority of Veyari weapons to the human. In the wide training field, massive starships floated in formation. Beams of bright energy tore through the air as the ships fired in sequence, their weapons lighting up the sky. The ground trembled beneath the sound of their power. The generals stood proudly, their jeweled armor glinting in the light. One of them sneered at Marcus. Do humans not respect such strength? Marcus folded his arms, unimpressed. Strength isn't just firepower. True strength is standing with those who have none, even when it costs you. The hall fell silent. The generals frowned, insulted by the answer. Some muttered angrily. Liara's heart pounded. She could feel the weight of every eye turning toward her, waiting for her reaction. She wanted to remain composed, but her chest tightened with an emotion she couldn't fully name. Respect? Admiration? She studied Marcus carefully. He stood calmly, not challenging anyone, not raising his voice. Yet his words carried more power than the weapons had. The council ended the demonstration quickly, whispering their displeasure. But Liara could not forget what she had heard. Days passed, and the encounters between Liara and Marcus continued. Each time she tried to remain the calm, untouchable princess. Each time, Marcus spoke with plain honesty that cracked her composure little by little. One evening, they stood on the balcony overlooking the stars. The galaxy stretched before them in endless light, and silence lingered between them. Liara finally asked the question she had held back for days. Do you see me only as a princess? Marcus turned to her. His eyes were steady. No, I see someone who carries a crown, yes. But I also see someone who carries the weight of it alone. Her breath caught. She had never admitted such thoughts aloud, yet he had spoken them as if he could see straight into her heart. She turned away quickly, hiding her trembling hands in the folds of her robe. Stay calm, she told herself. Stay calm. But the truth was clear. She was failing. Marcus Hale was not just a human soldier in her palace. He was a storm she could not ignore, and deep inside, Princess Liara knew her struggle to stay calm had only just begun. The palace of the Veyari Empire floated in orbit like a shining crown above the blue-green world below. Its walls were made of living crystal that captured the light of distant suns and scattered it across the sky. Inside the palace, long corridors opened into vast chambers, each decorated with banners of silver and gold, each a reminder of the Empire's long power. In the Grand Council Hall, Princess Liara stood before her throne. She was tall and graceful, her skin pale with a faint shimmer, her violet eyes calm on the surface but restless within. Her sapphire blue hair was tied back with silver cords, and a jeweled circlet rested on her brow. Everything about her posture showed elegance and control. Yet in her heart she struggled. Today she would meet a human. The thought alone made her uneasy. She had been raised on stories about humans, how strange they were, how reckless, how dangerous. Some said they were savages who rushed into battle without fear. Others said they were cunning survivors who could adapt to anything. No one agreed on what they truly were, but everyone spoke of them as if they were unpredictable. And now, one had been brought to the palace. The massive doors of the chamber opened with a deep hiss. Liara's eyes turned toward the sound and her pulse quickened. A single figure stepped into the hall. He wore no shining robes, no golden armor like the alien generals who usually visited. Instead, his suit was plain, scratched, and practical. His boots made a steady sound on the polished crystal floor. He was human. The counselors whispered among themselves. Some leaned forward curious. Others sneered, unimpressed. The man walked with quiet confidence. He did not lower himself in the exaggerated bows that alien ambassadors always performed. He gave only a firm nod, as though he acknowledged her not as a goddess to be worshipped, but as a person to be respected. Liara's throat tightened. She reminded herself to breathe, to remain steady. She had been trained for moments like this. She could not let a simple soldier shake her calm. The man stopped before the throne. His gaze was steady, his posture strong but relaxed. State your name, Liara said, her voice formal, echoing across the chamber. Marcus Hale, the soldier replied. His words were short, but his tone carried strength. Liara studied him carefully. He was not tall compared to many of her people, but there was something unyielding in the way he stood. His brown hair was cut short, his face scarred in small ways that spoke of past battles. His eyes, though, were the most unsettling, clear, sharp, and unafraid. The counselors shifted in their seats. One of them hissed in her ear, "See how plain he is, fragile, soft compared to us. Why waste your time on such a creature?" But Liara did not agree. She saw no weakness in Marcus. His strength was not in muscle alone. It was something deeper, something harder to name. She forced herself to speak again, steady and calm. You stand before the Veyari Empire. Do you understand why you were summoned? Marcus nodded. To speak truth where others offer only polished lies. Gasps filled the hall. Some counselors laughed bitterly, shocked by the boldness. Others leaned back in offense. No one had ever spoken so plainly in this chamber. Liara's fingers tightened against her jeweled belt. She felt the tremor in her hands and quickly folded them together to hide it. Inside, her heart raced. Why does he speak so directly? Does he not fear insult? Does he not fear me? She swallowed, struggling to hold her calm expression. You dare to speak so openly in the presence of the council? Marcus shrugged slightly as if the answer was obvious. You asked why I'm here. I told you. I don't believe in wasting words. Again, the chamber rippled with shock. No one spoke to her this way. Not even generals, not even ambassadors from rival empires. They always wrapped their words in silk, layered them with false respect. But this man spoke like steel, straight, cold, and sharp. For the first time in many years, Liara felt her carefully built wall of calm begin to crack. She reminded herself of her lessons. A princess must never reveal fear. A princess must never reveal doubt. Yet, standing before this soldier, she realized fear was not the right word. It was something else, curiosity and something deeper. She studied him again, and this time she noticed details she had missed. His armor, though worn, was clean. His boots were old but carefully repaired. He carried himself not with arrogance but with quiet certainty. He was a man who had seen battles and survived them. He was not here to impress anyone. He was here simply as himself. The hall grew heavy with silence. Liara realized everyone was watching her, waiting to see how she would respond. She forced her voice into calm tones even as her chest tightened. You will remain in this palace until the council decides what to do with you, she said. During that time you will be expected to answer questions about your people. Marcus nodded once. I'll answer what I can. But I won't lie. The words hit her harder than she expected. They were simple. They were plain. But they carried a weight she could not ignore. She dismissed him with a wave, and guards escorted him out of the chamber. Yet long after the doors closed, she stood frozen in place. Her hands trembled again, and this time she did not hide it. Her mind repeated his words over and over. To speak truth where others offer lies. For the first time in her life, Liara felt her calm was not enough. This soldier had unsettled her in a way no enemy ever had. He had not threatened her, yet he had shaken her. He had not flattered her, yet he had made her heart race. As she walked back to her private chambers, she realized something that made her even more uneasy. She wanted to see him again.